But I just wanted to say, how do you handle, what if you're wrong, knowing how the Christians believe what the consequences really are? Like, it's mind-blowing to me only because I've had my own personal experiences, so God is, definitely real, and it's just amazing. The more I believe, the more he shows me. But then I say, wow, the consequences are real for me. How do you handle that? Or what do you say about that? What if you're wrong?
If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. The big thing is, there's, obviously you have a belief, and so there's a presumption that there's some risk on my part.
Right.
From where I sit, I'm risking being wrong about every religion, and you're risking being wrong about every religion except yours. And
Right.
I don't know how much time you've spent worrying about other religions' heavens or hells, but I don't think it's probably very high. And I don't spend any time worrying about anybody's heavens or hells. I live my life. I have sincerely and honestly pursued these things. I used to be a believer. I've looked around, and if it turns out that I die
Right.
and I'm still alive in some sense, and there was a God, I'd have to know. I can't really answer it because I'd have to know a lot more about that. So the first thing is there'd be a lot of questions. Any God that wants to condemn me to eternal torment and suffering, well, I can't do anything to stop them. But if they're willing to do that, knowing who I am and what kind of life I've led and how I honestly followed the evidence,
Right.
as far as I can tell, it's their fault that I don't know they exist. And if they want to punish me for that, then they're a moral thug, and I'll be happy to live, in eternal anguish knowing that I'm morally superior to them.
Okay, no, I accept that. I wouldn't even know what to say to that, and I wouldn't want to argue with you, but okay. I'm praying for you guys. I just hope that, you see the light, at least just reconsider maybe at some point. But thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it.
Sure. I reconsider all the time, and I'll tell you this, because this is kind of what I told my parents, and that's, you may be in a similar position, and that's, they believe that there's a God. They believe
Right.
that God is real. They believe that God answers prayer. They believe that God wants me to know that he exists. And so what I told them was, okay, pray that God reveals himself to me, because if that happens, I'm not going to deny it. But until it does, I'm not going to be, persuaded by emotional appeals and other people's claims about their experiences, because I have no way of verifying them. And,
Right.
To me, it's a big question as to why, why is Saul deserving of a Damascus Road experience, but the rest of us are just kind of, take it on faith. I can't do that. And what I can say is, well, I don't know what would convince me. If there is a God, that God absolutely knows what would convince me and should be capable of doing it, and yet for some reason hasn't done it. Now, that reason could be that he doesn't exist, or
Right.
it could be that there's some other plan that I'm not privy to. But until such time as it happens, I'm not going to change my mind just because maybe there could. I don't even know how people determined it was possible that there could be a God.
Well, for me, I was a non-believer for so many years, and then fell into some, sickness and not feeling good and anxious, and I finally gave up and said, I can't take it anymore, so let me start praying. And I asked other people to pray, and I will tell you, not instantaneously, but after 5 years, I not only began to see miracles, I was healed. He started to reveal himself more and more, to the point where I know him like I know my name is Lisa. So I know people aren't with me in that because everybody's experience is different, but I just now know that the more you believe or the more you ask him to reveal himself, he definitely will.
So
Because
then
if
you
did it
should
for me-
probably ask God why he hasn't revealed himself. I mean, if you know him like you know your own name,
Right.
then why don't you ask him why he hasn't done anything to convince me?
Because I think free will then goes out the window if he does.
Why
And I
would?
think
Why? No. Do you believe that there's
Okay.
Do you believe there's a Satan?
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Okay. Doesn't Satan have free will, and doesn't he absolutely know better than anybody in history exactly that there is a God and what God's power is?
Absolutely, yes.
So,
sure. Yeah,
so
he does.
the absolute knowledge that a God exists doesn't in any way infringe on free will. And I find it curious that you went immediately to, I think that would violate free will, instead of, okay, I'll actually ask God and see what he says.
Well, no, and you're right. I didn't think of that, but I definitely will do that. I will ask them and say, why do I know and why can't they know? Why does somebody leave the church or leave, having a foundation in Christianity? How come he can't be where I am? Yeah, I will definitely do that. I think that's a good point.
If he answers you, call back and let me know what he says.
I will, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
All right. Bye-bye.
What limits do atheists have?
Well, what culture? Tell me one culture that doesn't have limits. And every culture on the face of the earth has limits, and they're not Christian cultures. Chinese culture has got limits. Japanese, the most secular country in the world is Japan. They have the lowest rape rate. Denmark, Sweden, very unreligious places, and they don't have any rape problem. We have much more rape in the United States
and by the way,
they ever do in Denmark or Sweden.
Religion doesn't seem to be any kind of deterrent to rape. Are you implying that all rapists are non-Christians or non-religious? What about the priests who are raping little boys and little girls?
Where do you get your limits from?
I get my limits from a rational consideration of the consequences of my actions. That's how I determine what's moral. I get it from a foundation that says my actions have an effect on those people around me and theirs have an effect on me. And that if we're going to live cooperatively and share space, we have to recognize that impact. And my freedom to swing my arm ends at their nose. And that I have no right to impose my will over somebody else's will in that type of scenario. That's where I get them from. It's from an understanding.
What's the punishment if you do that then?
I get them
You're just going to die.
Andrew, I get them from an understanding of reality, not an assertion of authority. Now, what was the question?
Well, if you just do all that, let's just say you go out with a gun and you just rape a bunch of people, then you just shoot yourself, what's going to be the punishment for you?
If I go out and rape a bunch of people and shoot myself, what's going to be the punishment for me? I'll be dead?
Yeah.
I'll be dead.
And why?
It's not going to hurt. The bullet's going to go through your head in about a second. There isn't going to be any pain.
That's correct. I'll be dead. Okay, so let's flip the script here. Let's say somebody goes around and rapes and murders somebody, and then after they're done, they get saved. What's the punishment for them?
Oh, the punishment is hell.
No, they got saved.
They got saved.
Are you saying that a rapist can't be saved? See, this is the problem. This is the problem with Christian religion. It establishes unrealistic and irrational and immoral criteria by which to live. And then it creates a loophole so that you don't ever have to be responsible for those actions. No, Andrew, shut up till I'm done. Christianity is not a moral system. It is an immoral system because it specifically says that there aren't necessarily consequences that you're going to have to pay because of a loophole. And what is the loophole? It has nothing to do with how good you are or how morally you act or anything else. It has to do with whether or not you're willing to be a sycophant to an idea. And if you are, then there is now an exception for which you no longer have to suffer a penalty for this. So the idea that secular morality offers no guarantee that people will ever pay for their crimes and their atrocities is not an argument against secular morality, because that is a tenet of Christianity. It is the foundation. The idea that the Christian God is just is directly contradicted by the idea that the Christian God is merciful. Perfect justice and perfect in any mercy are necessarily directly in contradiction, because mercy is a suspension of justice. So do not pretend that your religion is moral and just and then try to attack my position, which is based on reality, because somebody might rape people, shoot themselves ahead, and then not get punished. That's asinine.
If religion is such a bad thing, how come you think, I don't know how many atheists are there in the United States? How come everyone isn't just an atheist then?
Because not everybody is aware of how bad and untrue religion is, which is one of the reasons why
you
we're
think
doing
you're some kind of genius or something? That
Actually, yeah, but why is that relevant?
Everyone else is too dumb to figure it out?
No, it's not a matter of too dumb. You see, I was a Christian for 25 plus years.
Let me ask you a question. Why are you calling in as a Christian? Why didn't you call in as a Muslim, a Buddhist, or a Hindu?
Because my parents raised me as a Christian.
So you didn't have a choice, did you? When did you choose to be a Christian?
Well, it's just a tradition. Your parents teach you whatever religion they do. So if you were born over,
so if you were
in
born a
Afghanistan,
Muslim,
you'd be a Muslim.
Yeah.
If you were born a Muslim.
So it has nothing to do with truth then. It's just the way you were raised. See, because on this show we actually care about whether or not things are true. And my genius status is completely irrelevant because I was a Christian for 25 plus years. I did not get smarter when I became an atheist. What happened was I gained more information. I became more knowledgeable about subjects. And I decided to actually care whether or not my beliefs were true. You don't seem to care whether or not your beliefs are true. You just like them.
Because you were born here.
Well, I think it's good. I think you're going to have more happiness in your life if you have limits to tell you what you can do or
how is that relevant to the truth of your religion? I've already said.
It's not all true. I know. I was talking to people on the chat here, and they said, well, they're like, read the Old Testament. There's all this genocide and stuff, and I was just saying, well, you don't have to read the whole thing because you just read, for example, what Jesus said.
Okay.
You don't.
So are you saying? I tell you what, we already talked about this earlier. Not everything that Jesus said is true or good or smart or wise either. So why would you care at all what any of them have to say? You're not concerned about truth. You've already just said you can pick and choose and toss aside the things you don't like. So you're inventing your own version of Christianity. So why not just chuck it aside and go ahead and invent your own secular moral system? You keep talking about how we don't have limits. I have plenty of limits. And we live in a society that has plenty of limits. As Daryl's already pointed out, most societies have limits. You keep going to this slippery slope thing of, well, if there is no, 10 Commandments or Jesus or whatever, then you've got no limits. You'll just run around raping and killing people. Well, that's already demonstrably false. And there have been multiple studies that actually investigate the correlation between the religiosity of a society and its societal health. And there is always a strong negative correlation. The more atheistic the society, the better they score on societal health factors, from everything from teenage pregnancy rates to STDs to happiness to wealth to
murder,
rape to health care. Now, go out and do some actual research that contradicts this, and then you might have a case for your assertion that I think you'll live a better life if you're. No, you won't. There's no evidence to demonstrate this. This is wishful thinking. Just as not only have you gone and said, well, I'll pick and choose what I want, you've done it in a way where you're just trying to support your own wishful thinking. And until you actually come up with evidence, and until you demonstrate that you care about the truth, we don't really need to waste any more time on it. And I guess we won't.